Hello and welcome to New York. Welcome to the United Nations for an exclusive interview with the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon. Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for being with us.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
We thank you all the more because those are very tense times. The crisis in Syria, the General Assembly of the United Nations coming very soon. I'll begin with Syria. The Secretary of State John Kerry, his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, and your envoy Lakhdar Brahimi said this week in Geneva that they hope they would find a date for a new peace conference on Syria. Are you hopeful that a diplomatic solution can be reached?
While we have been experiencing terrible tragedies in Syria, the only viable option is a political solution. That is why we are working very hard together with Lakhdar Brahimi and together with the co-initiators, Russia and the United States, to convene Geneva II conference. I had a very good talk this morning with Lakhdar Brahimi, who briefed me about his trilateral meeting. We will really try to convene this Geneva II conference as soon as possible. September may be too busy with the General Assembly, and there are so many discussions are going on chemical weapons investigation report. Therefore, we will try to find out practically possible dates as soon as possible.
October is a viable date in terms of this peace conference, Geneva II as it's known?
We are targeting to do it sometime in October, but we will have to work very hard. And we will have to evaluate the rapidly changing situation on the ground and also in political surroundings.
Right. Should this conference also include Iran, for instance?
That is yet to be decided. We have not yet formed up who should be participants, particularly when it comes to the participation of Iran and Saudi Arabia. And there is a serious question of how the opposition forces could be represented. We are asking them to be united and send a single delegation who can have authoritative voice reflecting the wills and voices of Syrian people. So, of course, we will have representative of Syrian government.
Right. Before that, as you mentioned briefly, there's the big issue that's been taking a lot of your time, I assume, the issue of the chemical weapons. There is this report that's about to be issued. You said that the report would be overwhelming, that there were indeed chemical weapons used on August 21st.
We have seen such horrendous and terrible images which happened August 21st in Syria, in Ghouta area of Damascus. And we have been working very seriously to prevent such kind of tragedies. But at this time, while everybody is saying that there was chemical weapons used, and even my own personal belief that the chemical weapons could have been used.
That's your personal belief?
Yes, but the official findings will be made scientifically, based on scientific analysis and investigation, which will come shortly. I'm expecting that Dr. Selstrom will bring me his own report
the chief
soon.
Inspector?
Yes, yes.
Will very soon. Okay. Do you think that, I know the mandate was tailored not to say who used those weapons. However, there's a way of writing a report whereby you would obviously see that those weapons were used by either the opposition or the regime. Do you think the report, in the way it will be written, will point fingers very clearly at who was behind that attack?
my mandate, as well as that of Dr. Sellstrom and his investigation team, is to determine whether there was a chemical weapon used. We are not here to determine who used against whom.
But will the report, maybe if you read the report, you will obviously reach that conclusion. And, you know, depending on what kinds of weapons were used, that only the regime, for instance, had those kinds of weapons.
As you know, investigators, they have collected biomedical and environmental evidences. And I'm sure that the scientists in the laboratories must have analyzed all based on their scientific findings. I have not yet seen any contents.
But the evidence will be strong, you believe?
I believe so, but okay. You know, any official and definitive answer will have to be wait. We have to wait.
Okay, how close were we to a military intervention at the very end of August? August 30th, August 31st, did you think we were on the verge of a military strike by the US, France, maybe other countries against Syria?
Well, I'm not in a position to determine how close it was, because it was not in my hands. It was mainly discussed by United States and some other European countries.
Did you fear that was about
Yes,
to
of course. You know, I thought that it was quite serious and also it might have been quite imminent, but I was not in that process.
Right.
Yeah.
10 years ago, your predecessor, Kofi Annan, described the US intervention in Iraq as illegal if there is no mandate by the Security Council for such a military strike. Would such a strike be illegal in your eyes?
I have made my position and the position of the United Nations very clear on several occasions. And all these discussions and any operations should be guided within the charter framework of the United Nations.
Right. Speaking of the United Nations, are you in favor of a strong resolution on whether Bashar al-Assad, on how Bashar al-Assad should basically get rid of his chemical weapons? There is Chapter 7 with enforcement capacities as an option, but the Russians are not too keen on it. What's your favorite option? What do you think would be a clear mandate to, first of all, figure out what kind of weapons there are and how they can be destroyed?
First of all, I will have to review the report of Dr. Sellstrom and his team, and if confirmed by the scientific examinations that the chemical weapons were used, it will create a serious violation and horrendous violation of international law. I believe that the international community should take firm and necessary actions to make sure that this kind of crime will never happen again, and bring the perpetrators to justice. And the Security Council will have to play a very decisive role to make sure that this kind of crimes will never happen, and the justice should be made.
A decisive role generally implies Chapter 7 mandate, which is a strong mandate. That's what you're implying, right?
I believe that there must be a very decisive and firm actions taken by the international community.
You said reportedly that Bashar al-Assad committed many crimes against humanity. Should he be held accountable for this, and is the International Criminal Court where he should end?
Use of or threat of chemical weapons and any other kinds of weapons of mass destruction by anyone under any circumstances for any reason should be condemned and should be brought to justice. And this is serious crimes against the humanity and the violation of international law.
Yes, and at the hands of Bashar al-Assad.
Including everybody, yeah.
Right. You are quoted in a book saying that Assad is probably the worst liar you have had to deal with. Would you go to Damascus, if need be, to discuss with him?
I'm ready to do anything under any circumstances if I can be helpful in bringing peace and stability and security. And fighting must stop. And we must begin dialogue. Yeah.
What if you're told, Mr. Ban, here is a mission for you. If you grant legal immunity to Bashar al-Assad, he accepts to leave power. What would you do? Would you rather sign peace, stop the fighting, maybe at the expense of justice?
This is premature for me to make any judgment at this time. The situation is rapidly changing. Russia and the United States are now sitting together to establish some modalities to deal with the chemical weapons destruction, eventual ultimate destruction. And the Syrian government has expressed their intention to accede to the Chemical Weapons Convention. I sincerely hope that they will be very faithfully, sincerely committed, adhering to all the regulations of the Chemical Weapons Convention. Therefore, all your questions could be answered as a situation develops.
Right, but that being said, the victims of those alleged chemical attacks represent 1% maybe of the 120,000 victims of the war. I mean, it seems impossible that you could only deal with the Syrian crisis to this chemical weapons issue. I mean, a lot more needs to be done. I mean, just for instance, inspectors who need to be on the ground in the midst of a civil war. That's basically impossible, isn't it?
That is true. That is why I have been consistently saying that while these chemical weapons is very horrendous crimes and many people have been killed, but at the same time we should never lose sight of the continuing fighting where during the last 2.5 years more than 100,000 people have already been killed, 7.5 million people have been internally displaced or sought refugees. Therefore, we have to mobilize all possible humanitarian assistance to help them. And we must do all the possible diplomatic efforts to stop this fighting.
Right, last question. Are you fearing that Bashar al-Assad may be setting a trap because he knows that those chemical weapons, until they're identified, destroyed, could take years, and that this might be a way for him to earn some time and maybe continue the fighting through conventional weapons?
While it was quite encouraging to see that there was an initiative by Russia and the United States in which President Assad has seemingly positively responded by all these chemical weapons available for international monitoring and ultimate destruction. That is positive, but at the same time, I sensed in the international community some sense of skepticism. Therefore, it is absolutely necessary. Yes, I also share. Therefore, it is important for the Syrian authorities to make a sincere and very faithful implementation of what they have said, to prove that their proposals are sincere and true.
I want to move away from Syria, not too far, to a country that's maybe forgotten, but where people are dying, more than 4,000 deaths since the beginning of the year, Iraq. Only today there was again a bombing. Are you fearing that 10 years after the US intervention, Iraq is on the brink of civil war again?
Now, with the withdrawal of American forces and other coalition forces, we expect that Iraq could be able to enjoy their own prosperity and stability, and political stability and security on their own. Now, I had a meeting with my special representative in Iraq, Mr. Mladinov, and I have been briefed all the situation. We are very closely following the situation. It's true that we have been very much troubled by this ongoing terrorist attacks against the civilian population. It is totally not acceptable. Therefore, we really need to help them. And the leadership of Iraq should also try to stabilize their domestic political situation through inclusive dialogue, comprising all the...
but that's not happening
yes,
right now.
all the groups.
But that's not happening.
That I'm urging them to do that.
Okay, I want to move to Iran. A new president was elected, Hassan Rouhani. He has sent signals that he's willing to negotiate on the nuclear issue. The talks have gone nowhere in recent months. He is scheduled to come to the General Assembly. Are you planning to meet him? And are you encouraged by the fact that he is sending those signals?
I have been very closely following the current situation, and it's true that they are sending out positive messages. And it's encouraging that they are trying to talk with the international community as a whole and try to make themselves available for a dialogue. I have been speaking with Foreign Minister Zarif, and I have dispatched my Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Mr. Jeff Feltman. He had a very good meeting with the Foreign Minister. I'm looking forward to my meeting with new President Rouhani and also Foreign Minister Zarif. While we appreciate such due an attitude as well as positive signals coming from Tehran, all these should be met with firm and concrete measures, implementation. Therefore, I would urge the members of the P5+1 to continue their consultation and negotiation on nuclear issues. And I, as a Secretary General, will spare no efforts to facilitate such atmosphere.
Okay, do you think that deep down Iran is indeed pursuing a military nuclear program like North Korea did?
There are 5 Security Council resolutions, and it's important for Iranians to comply fully with all Security Council resolutions to prove that they are genuinely sincere. Since this is a new government, a new president, so I think we need to give some time for them to prove themselves, and it's also always important to have good dialogues. That is why I'm really looking forward to meeting President Rouhani and also separately Foreign Minister Zarif.
Okay, I want to switch to Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The mission there, MONUSCO, has been criticized for years for not being able to get a handle on the security situation in the east of the country. Now the mandate has been bolstered. There's a new intervention brigade. There's been fighting going on. This is a new era, basically, for the mission and maybe for UN peacekeeping. How optimistic are you that this more aggressive mandate will change the equation on the ground?
This intervention brigade has been able to stabilize the situation last month. Now, we see relative stability in Goma, North Kivu area. It's owing to such a firm, determined political will to address the situation. And that at the same time, there's a peace talk is going on in Kampala with the Congolese government as well as M23 representatives. I hope this peace talk will also bear good fruits.
Okay, I want to get to another country that's basically forgotten, Centrafrique. In your last report, you mentioned a total breakdown in law and order. Every day there are people killed Do you think the UN should intervene over there, or at least should do something, because it seems no one cares?
This is another area of great concern with all this toppling of government in the Central African Republic. There has been always a continuing of instability. I appreciate the African Union and the Central African the Economic Community of Central African states for their active involvement. This seems to be...
But it's not enough.
Not enough. It's not working well.
So should the UN step in?
That we will have to continue to discuss. We have dispatched the joint assessment teams. Based on these joint assessment teams of findings, we will try to discuss with the Security Council members what needs to be done. And basically, African Union and the regional organization should take more and a greater leadership role. But United Nations is always ready to help.
Okay, one last country I want to talk about is Haiti. There was a cholera outbreak after the earthquake 2.5 years ago. 8,000 people died. Mounting evidence says that UN peacekeepers from Nepal were the cause of this epidemic. The UN has claimed legal immunity, has refused to apologize. 8,000 people die. Why, Mr. Secretary General, don't you apologize for that? Is there a reason?
We are very much, saddened by all this what had happened. While legally we answered that this case is not receivable in terms of legal aspect, but it's not that the United Nations has not taken any action. United Nations and myself are very much committed to help those people, and we are working very closely.
I know that you are, but why don't you think a public apology is why don't you publicly apologize to them? That's my question.
As you may know, this inquiry commission, which was composed of scientists and established by me, their findings, initial finding was not clear.
They changed their mind now.
But they changed individually after many, many months later, which I do not know whether that has any official status. Therefore, I think what is important at this time, that rather than sticking to legal aspect, who caused this one, it's not scientifically clear at this time. That is why we really are mobilizing necessary resources to help those people. Now, number of mortality have been reducing, and also cases of new cholera has been, I think, declining. And therefore, government and international community led by the United Nations should continue to help.
Okay, last question. I know you've worked a lot to promote gender equality in the world, also within the UN. This is your second and last mandate. Do you think the next Secretary General should be a woman for the first time?
I'm the 8th Secretary General, and by the time I finish, it will be over 70 years since the founding of the United Nations. And there is a great awareness of importance of gender equality and gender empowerment. I'm very much encouraged that the United Nations has been leading by example just to increase the gender empowerment. Many countries are now following the examples of the United Nations. Then it's up to the member state, but it may be a good timing for any very distinguished woman that could succeed me. But after all, it's not my choice or decision, but I'm sure that there will be many such good candidates.
Okay, Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for taking some of your precious and busy time to answer our questions, and thank you very much for watching this special edition of the interview from the United Nations here in New York. Stay tuned here on France 24 for more news.